All right. Well, let's get started, guys. So, hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jason Chang. I'm a professor at UConn and direct the Institute for Asian American Studies. And, this is an ongoing meeting space. We're calling it the Advanced Curriculum and Pedagogy Lab, because this is where we want to experiment with ideas, bring in practitioners, pre-teaching students, and UConn faculty and other interested folks to really, do the groundwork for building our state's API curriculum. And, thinking of this space as a long-term kind of engagement space for building the professional development and deploying resources. So with that, I have some good news to share. Let's see, let me see if my notes are up here. Okay, yes, so let me copy this here. So in the chat, I dropped a link to our bill that's in the legislature right now. This is HB 5282, and it has language in there that makes Asian American Pacific Islander studies a requirement in Connecticut K through 12 education. And the great thing about this too is that comes also with $100,000 support. Which would be a new position in State Department of Education. And so this is, we have bipartisan support, like more than half the House and many members of the Senate. So, and they're voting this week. So this is, and it's moving quickly. We're not exactly sure which legislative vehicle it will be on, but we have our fingers crossed. This is really great news. So for our Connecticut folks, this is like extra credit. If you want, you can get in touch with Representative Curry or Jason Rojas here. And we would like for this to be a standalone floor vote where we can actually hear from supporters. But at the same time, we just want the bill to get passed. So it may go through what's called like an implementer bill, which is kind of like a big, omnibus kind of bill. So so anyway, this is where we're at with this work. We're really confident that this will get past this session. So that gives us to 2025 to do that work of building the curriculum and building capacity to meet those needs across the state. So super excited for this. We're really, it's been a huge team effort at Make Us Visible and other partners at the commission. I'm going to have Megan introduce herself, and she's been involved. So this has just been a wild ride. And really, psyched to be in this space with y'all. So, so that's kind of my preamble update on how, how the legislative piece is going. But, whether or not we have that legislation in queue, I would still be trying to do this work. And so this is, really, where I see, the work of not just trying to identify maybe, critical webinars to have on occasion, but to really generate ideas about sustained contact and sustained processes that we can use to build what I've been calling like homegrown Asian American studies here in Connecticut with Connecticut communities. And so, in order to do that, the kind of like brain trust that we need in order to develop that, really wanted to bring in national leaders. And so earlier this week, we got to speak with Catherine Ye and Andrea Neighbors, who's joined us again today. And hearing their thoughts about about the development of collections, partnerships with teachers, linking STEM math education with ethnic studies, detracking in STEM fields in the public schools as a means for broadening exposure to this curriculum, not just say social studies, but across many different dimensions. So in addition to that, I feel like I've kind of brought in all of these folks that I have been admiring and just really wanted to bring their conversation into our space. So we have Soyhun from Kennesaw, and Sarah Park Dahlen and Terry Park. Really, these folks are national leaders, widely recognized for the work that they do. And so I've invited them to give kind of short presentations to catalyze our thinking. So we can ask questions. I've shared a little bit of their work in an email, but also, we want to ask questions not just about, say, content, but, what might a strong investment in these methods mean for us long term? And, with the being able to support that with the Institute, I feel like this is the space to kind of explore those possibilities. So I've asked y'all to kind of make some introductions and share some of your work with us. So but I think it might be helpful for you guys, and also just to see who's in the room, if we can do a quick round of introductions. So you all know me, but if I can call on folks just to give kind of quick hellos and say where you're coming in from, I think that would be super. So Chris, could you go first?
Sure. Hi, folks. My name is Chris Nystrom. I am the Director of English at Regional District 19, which is E.O. Smith on the Yukon campus.
Awesome. And Megan, can you go?
Hello, my name is Megan Baker. I am the lead AAPI policy analyst at the Connecticut State Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity.
Awesome, thanks. And Nicole.
Hi, my name is Nicole Richmond. I'm the Social Studies Department Leader at Farmington High School. I was connected to Jason through some students, actually, some really amazing students, as we're exploring ways to make our curriculum more diverse and inclusive.
Yeah, awesome. Andrea, can you go?
Hey everyone, my name is Andrea Kim Neighbors. I am the Manager of Education Initiatives for the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center. It's nice to see you all.
Awesome. And Caitlin.
Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin True. I'm the Graduate Assistant at the Asian American Cultural Center on Yukon campus.
Great, thank you, Caitlin. Lovely to have you. JHD, if you're able to introduce yourself, would love to hear from you.
Hi, I'm JHD, or Jenny Hakila Diaz. I use they and she pronouns, and I have been working with Jason as one of the activists in residence at Yukon in the Asian American Studies Institute.
Awesome. Yeah, JHD has been the lifeblood of our program to teach T-buoys the best we could do across like 10 high school classrooms this year. So tremendous work. Really glad she's here. Michelle, if you're available, can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, Jason. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Henry, high school English teacher in Simsbury, Connecticut. I've been collaborating with Jason in establishing a high school Asian American Studies course. And in fact, this morning, I just proposed the course to our Board of Ed, and they were very much impressed. And thank you again for all the work that you've done to support this course, and just so excited that this course will be a model for other partner schools across the state of Connecticut.
Yeah, Michelle, thank you for your leadership. This has been just tremendous. So that was terrific news from you. And Tara, if you're available, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sorry, my camera is switched off. I'm outside of the home, so I'm walking on the street. My name is Tara. Full name is Ali Asghar Tara. I'm the artist in residence for this semester with Asian and Asian American Studies Institute. And I'm very glad to be here and be a part of the whole initiative. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tara. And Lauren, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Francesi. I am the Social Studies Coordinator for the Westport Public Schools. I am also a project associate on the state standards project. So I've been working with Jason on the steering committee and a lot of good work moving forward there. So I'm excited to be included in this and be part of this today. In Westport, we are working on a number of pieces. We actually I just presented with a group of my colleagues our equity study on Monday night, which was a 3-hour marathon of emotions in the community. But it was a really positive step in the right direction of where we're going with our school communities and specifically making some efforts to do better work in our curriculum. So I'm excited to be part of that here and excited to hear what's going to be presented today.
Awesome. Yeah, great work down there. Thank you for joining. It's been great to be connected with folks in Westport with Westport API. They've been tremendous advocates and very inspiring. So this is a great group. Thank you all for tuning in. And I think what I'd like to do is have you each kind of introduce yourselves and give you a short presentation. If I could have you go in order, Soyhun, Sarah, and then Terry, is that okay? Yeah, okay, great. And you should have sharing permissions if you have slides that you'd like to share. It's not a requirement at all, obviously, but it should be good to go.
Okay, so I think Jason said like 4 to 5 minutes, but I think I have a little more. So if I go
fine.
too much, please stop. I want my feeling won't get hurt because as a mother, like so much things, like all the mother anger. Okay, hi everyone. It's so good to be in this community. Like Jason said, like I admire everybody in this room. Just briefly hearing from you what you're doing in your given like the position, that is so amazing. So I'm honored to be here with you, amazing people. My name is Soyhun. I'm professor of social studies education at Kennesaw State. I'll weave who I am with what I'm doing, why am I doing, where I'm going. I'm a migrant settler from South Korea, currently living in Georgia, the stolen Cherokee and Muscogee territory. I'm social study curriculum scholar, and also right here, I'm a teacher educator of elementary social studies, a mother scholar with the 2 Korean American girls, and I'm co-founder of Asian American Voices for Education. So I'm gonna weave through who I am with what I'm doing. So let me start with Atlanta spa shooting. This has been like for all of us in this room, right? Like this was a traumatic and like a huge grieving moment for me, because I live like literally 50 minutes away from the shooting site. So then like because of my grief, because of my anger, although I'm a social study curriculum scholar, so I have been doing the the curriculum study, curriculum analysis of social study curriculum textbook, and then state level curriculum standard. But like after Atlanta shooting, like I need to do like a nationwide curriculum analysis study. So I collected all the 50 state social studies, particularly U.S. history curriculum standard portion. I analyzed whether or not Asian American history is being taught, and if it's included, how Asian American stories are presented in our national storytelling of America. So this is a study based on right after Atlanta shooting. I embarked on this study and I published, like it came about early this year. So as you might see, right, we cannot compare apple to, because the standard, each state has their own way to like structure standards. So it's kind of like apple to orange comparison. But nationwide, among the 50 states, 18 states had the 0 Asian American content. Barely, most of the states just include 1 or 2 events. We know the usual suspect, right? The Japanese incarceration and Chinese exclusion. That's pretty much it. And then another moment, like, you know, I think this was before the Atlanta mass shooting, after my girl went back to face-to-face schooling after a year of the virtual school. My second child, her name is Terry. She was 8 years old at that time. She came back, hey, mommy, this is what happened. So what happened, Terry? She said, you know, so this, I'm going to just a little like reconstruct the narrative. Terry went back to face-to-face schooling after several months of virtual schooling during pandemic. During lunchtime in cafeteria, her classmate asked, hey, Terry, are you Chinese? Do you eat bad? Another said, you must have COVID. So, you know, as a mother, right, we know this. If young children are old enough to oppress others, they are old enough to learn about the oppression. Like these days, all this conversation around the anti-CRT, right? Like, don't make my children, white children, feel uncomfortable. Well, you know, if white kids can say horrible things to another kids, they are ready to. So we cannot say like students are not, they are not ready for this hard conversation. So like a Terry's, my mother's interaction with my child, right? Critical race parenting, like I got to dig up the history, right? And then it turned out flat, right? Dark history. The America has a long history of racializing epidemic in the United States. So COVID-19 is not the first time. 2003 SARS, although it was a huge epidemic, we see similar like a scapegoating back in the day, like a smallpox and bubonic plague. You know, Chinese or Asian Americans were targeted. And again, Asians are also not the only racial minoritized group. Other racial marginalized group were also scapegoated during the like a pandemic or epidemic time. So we have this repeating ugly history. So how do I stop this? So based on my historical dig up and research, I wrote a teacher practitioner article through the National Council for the Social Studies. So this article for the particularly for the like how to teach about the current moment anti-Asian violence during pandemic in the larger context of America's long history of racialized epidemic in the United States, how social studies teachers can bring this history into their teaching, and specific lesson plan for the teachers, how to teach anti-Asian violence during epidemic through the C3 inquiry lesson. Another the mother anger moment, my child, the first child, the daughter, she's Jackie, when she was a 5th grade, now she's the 8th grade, but when she was a 5th grade, in Georgia curriculum, 5th grade, we teach all like a second half of US history. So by the time when she learned about the Korean War, this is what happened, and I kind of reconstructed mother-child conversation. So Jackie, a 10-year-old Korean American girl, was sitting in a classroom learning about the Korean War. Her teacher explained America went to Korea to rescue poor South Koreans from communism. While listening, Son is distracted. She's thinking about her grandfather who saw his father being shot by US soldier and his village being bombed by US warplane. Son is also thinking about 2 girls in South Korea in 2002 who were crushed to death by US military armored vehicle in a town near US military base in South Korea. So again, right, for Jackie, like Jackie has all these family histories and narratives that she hears from school. But at school, right, the teachers, the dominant narrative that the teachers and the United States in general portraying about the South Korean War, the Korean War, it's all about United States is always a rescuer, right? So then like a teaching United States exclusively as a vulnerable rescuer, it dismisses Jackie's family history and experiential knowledge. And not only that, for the old students to continue the myth about US war as a rescue and liberation mission. So how do I do? So because of this anger, I was like, I'm sick and tired of the US textbook that like portrayed that based on the US imperialism, American exceptionalism. So I was thinking about what about, because I'm elementary teacher educator, right? If textbook is a BS, then is there, what other like a pedagogical tool for elementary teachers can use to teach, well, critically teach about American war, particularly in Asia. So I collected all the children's book published in the United States about the Korean War. So that is about a research article. And based on the research article, I wrote about teacher practitioner article about to empower our elementary school teachers when they teach about Korean War, how they can go beyond like a national narrative, you know, Korean War as a US liberation rescue mission. Another part, like, when I hear from my kids what she learned about the Vietnam War in 5th grade, that in itself also wrong, right? So Vietnam War, teachers only focusing on names and dates of the Vietnam War, and they don't teach Vietnam War as the major force behind the Southeast Asian migration. Oftentimes in United States, we just so dissociate the Vietnam War and the Southeast Asian migration as if, right, Southeast Asia just came here for the refugee crisis, which is not, America has nothing to do with it. So then I also, like, for the elementary school teacher, right, I really see the like a great pedagogical value of a Southeast Asian refugee children's book, because this refugee children's book is like a critically juxtaposed the Vietnam War and the Southeast Asian migration. So I analyzed the children's book and research article, and based on that, I wrote about the children teacher practitioner article, how elementary teachers can teach Vietnam War by centering Southeast Asia refugee voices. And I created some pedagogical tool for the teachers using building on this children's book. And similarly about the, when we teach about World War II, like the Pearl Harbor myth, right? As if United States, the World War II as a good war, United States during the World War II as like great, the heroes, and then Pearl Harbor as if the only Japan's attack on the United States. So then in order to debunk all those myths, like I wrote about this article for the elementary school teachers, so then teachers can go beyond the United States was empire, right? In the Pacific theater, it was about US and Japan. It's like a fight over the territory because colonies. It's not just Pearl Harbor, like a Philippines and Guam and Wake Island. Most of the U.S. Pacific colonies were invaded by Japan. So this article is about how we can move above beyond the Pearl Harbor myth, and then more bringing, how to say, for engaging 5th grader students to interrogate the convergence of U.S. imperialism, racism, and war through the World War II lesson. I'm gonna end with just one example. I think it really captures well about what I'm doing, why am I doing. So this is the 1st grade Georgia standard. So Georgia standard is similar to many other state that has a really content specific. So Georgia in 1st grade, it's all about American heroes, but we cannot teach all the heroes, right? So Georgia power that we select a few that all 1st graders in Georgia should know about it. So these are the important American heroes: Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Louis St. Clair with the Sacagawea, Theodore Roosevelt, George Washington Carver, and Ruby Bridge. Again, right? Oh, as an Asian American, well, we don't see none of that. We don't see any Latinx heroes. So then when students are learning about the Ruby Bridge, that's where I came in. So for when my second child, Terry, when she was a 1st grade, I contacted my 1st grade adult, Terry's teacher, and then I met with her teacher along with the all 1st grade teacher team. I introduced, hey, I can help you with revamping this Ruby Bridge unit. What about we so using the Ruby Bridge as an entry point to learn about other badass girls in American history who fought against school segregation. So students first learn about the Ruby Bridge. So I help with the 1st grade team rewrite their curriculum. So students first learn about the Ruby Bridge, and then they learn about Alice Piper, Indigenous Girl, and Mamie Tate, and Sylvia Mendes. So then a school segregation is not just about black-white racial binary. It's not about during the 1950s in the South, school segregation battles starting from the 1800s across the racial group, right? Chinese and Mexicans and indigenous groups and blacks. So that students learn about this rich, long, and multiracial history of a school segregation, desegregation struggle. One day I came in as a mystery reader. I read about I'm Not a Number, which is a children's book, the American Indian boarding school experience. I read a book, and then for the, how can I say, culminating assessment after students all learned about these 4 girls. Our assessment was, hey kiddos, we learned about these 4 badass girls. Choose one girl from the history and then compare yourself. Because in 1st grade in Georgia math curriculum, we first introduced the Venn diagram, so students know about this Venn diagram. So this is my daughter when Terry came home after she said, hey, this is the mommy I did today. Oh, so Terry, she chose Mamie Tate and compare with herself, right? Both to Terry's eye, both Mamie and Terry has a black hair, same eye color. They both believe in herself. They are brave. But Terry, unlike Mamie, Terry go to fair school. She's Korean. She's 6 years old. She lives in Georgia with her family portrait. Everybody has a round, big shaped belly kind of thing. But for the Mamie tape, unlike the Terry, Mamie went to the Ampere school. She was Chinese and lived in California, kind of thing. So like a first grade level of like understanding about the history, right? So when although I knew why Terry chose Mamie, but I asked, hey Terry, among the 4 girls, I see that you chose Mamie and compare yourself. Can you explain why you chose Mamie? And Terry said, well, mommy, I liked all the 4 girls. They are amazing, but I like the Mamie the best because she looked like me. That's Terry's saying. Again, like kids love to make a connection to the what they are learning in school. We talk about all the culturally relevant pedagogy or the multicultural education. This is exactly what we are talking about, right? So based on this mother-child movement, my engagement with my child, the school district, I wrote about this first grade team, the teachers' effort to revamping the curriculum. I wrote about this one. I'm gonna quickly ending. So my partner in crime, Dr. Nassim Rodriguez and I, we did also like amazing things this year. So we are so proud of this. So National Council for the Social Studies is the leading national group organization of the social study education in the United States. In our more than 100 years of history in our organization, we never had the journal special issue dedicated to the Asian American history. There's like always a special issue, like not every year, but like from time to time about the special issue on how to teach Black history, how to teach Women's History Month well, how to teach like a Hispanic Heritage Month well. But there has never been like a special issue for the teachers how to teach, how to celebrate critically and authentically about Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So then Noreen and I, we pushed our journal, our organization. So this year is the first year that finally we have this special issue, like a lot of teachers, a lot of amazing articles curated about like bringing Asian American studies into K-5 elementary school. And Noreen and I also, we are currently working on developing staff aid from the staff AAPI. So we are developing a framework for K-12 Asian American studies. I'm part of the Asian American Voices for Education. This is the Asian American collectives in Georgia, like a Make Us Visible. We named ourselves Asian American Voices for Education. Similarly, like you do as a Make Us Visible in New Jersey and Connecticut and other places, we are working, although in different political contexts, right? Georgia is not, we don't see any time soon it's gonna happen, but we kind of sneakily working in a different way to make things happening. So this is a part of this AVED, AAVED work, like, we providing teacher workshop for the in Georgia school teachers, and we are engaging Georgia social educator, K-12 educator about through this workshop. So that's what I have. I hope that it wasn't that too long, but yeah, it's all about the mother anger. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, Soyhun, that was amazing. You are a force. And yeah, I just love the way that you led with stories, and that was the catalyst for the work that you've done. I mean, it just so importantly demonstrates these methods, right? The go from your lived experience. Thank you so much. I know we're going to have a lot to talk about. I really want to bring other folks in. Sarah, can you go?
Yeah, it's really hard to follow Soyhun. I was like, I don't have slides, but I'm just very happy to be here in your company, all of you. So I'm an associate professor at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in the School of Information Sciences. I'm also affiliate faculty in the Department of Asian American Studies and the Center for East Asian and Pacific Studies, CEAPS. I have a background in Asian American Studies. I got my BA in History and Asian Am from UCLA, and then I stayed another 2 years and did my master's degree in Asian American Studies, where I studied, I did my thesis on Korean American picture books. And then went to Illinois, got my PhD, where I studied representations of Korean adoption in children's books. And I realized my last name is Dahlen. I'm not adopted. It's because my husband is an adopted Korean. But I've been in this game for 20 years now. I just found myself in the UCLA archives yesterday or 2 days ago, where I said in the year 2002 that I wanted to study Asian American children's books. And that's what I do. Part of that, everyone always asks me for book lists. And so I've published book lists in various places on the Asian Pacific American Librarian Association's website, on the School Library Journal website, and a lot of different places. So there's a lot of lists out there. I've worked with social justice books and other organizations. And one of the things that I also do is I work with the Smithsonian, the Asian American Lit Fest, which we have had 2 of now, 2017 and 2019. So I'm the very fancy name for it is curator of the youth literature programming. We had a panel of children's lit at the 2017 one, and then in 2019 we had 2 panels. We separated children's and young adult, and that was a lot of fun. And we're going to dream really big for the 2023 Lit Fest. So that's something I do. And then for Apala, I'm going to put the link into the chat. The Asian Pacific American Librarians Association, under let's see, under collection development, there's a rubric here on sort of like guidelines on how to evaluate Asian American children's literature, which I created together with 3 other Asian American children's librarians over the past couple of years, and we just finished this project recently. So we've given a lot of presentations on sort of how to use the rubric and how to think about, you know, how to look for model minority myth, how to look at slanted eyes and yellow skin and the language that is used, and even, you know, very popular books like To All the Boys I've Loved Before. You know, a very common criticism of that book is that none of the love interests, like there's so many, she's had a crush on so many guys and none of them are Asian American, right? And so just kind of thinking about like, what is, you know, in what ways are particular members of our community erased? Even when books are created by members of our community, right? I've also written discussion guides for children's books. When you've been in this game for this long, people start to ask you to do things. So one example is Maisie Chen's Last Chance by Lisa Yee. Lisa Yee has been an Asian American middle grade book writer for a very long time. And I think honestly, this is her best book. It's about a young Chinese American girl in California whose grandparents own a Chinese restaurant in Minnesota, which is where I physically am located right now. And the story goes back and forth between the present to the past. Lucky, her great-great-grandfather, fled San Francisco in the 1880s and came to Minnesota and started working at a Chinese restaurant and then eventually owned it. And so there's so much in there. This discussion guide practically wrote itself in asking questions about immigration, about anti-Chinese, anti-Asian racism, and all this stuff. It was so easy to write and it was such a good book. So I've done that with her book and with Tay Keller, and there's other ones, but I forgot. Yeah, but so I've written discussion guides. I've also created infographics. So like if anyone has seen this before, this is, I do not collect the data for this. I just put them into an infographic, and I'm also not the illustrator. I just facilitated the creation of the infographic, and I'm gonna put the link to that in the chat too, because you can get the PDFs and the JPEGs and use them for free as long as you properly cite us. But basically, they show the lack of diversity in children's books. And we've created 2. We created one in 2015 and 2018, and we use the metaphor of mirrors to show the lack of mirrors for BIPOC children. And then in the 2018 one, we added cracks to the mirrors to show that even with the increase in numbers and the bigger mirrors, the books are not all good books. A lot of them are still made by people outside of our communities without the lived experiences of being BIPOC, as well as, you know, like I said, some of the books even created by people within our communities are not necessarily good books. I've also given a lot of workshops on specific aspects of Asian American children's literature. So I've done a lot of PDs on analyzing children's books about transracial Asian adoption. I've also given a lecture on the history of slant-eyed discourse. I've been getting really, really frustrated because a lot of like with the growth of Asian American children's books, which has been very exciting, I have seen a lot more slanted eyes because people are like, oh, that's what marks an Asian person in a visual representation. And even Asian American illustrators make this, use that racial marker. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna study this and I'm gonna make something. And so I have a video, a YouTube video, which I can grab the link later for that one. But yeah, so I just put that out there because I was like, stop making slanted eyes on Asian faces. And then one of the most impactful things I've done, I think, is to create an open access research journal, Research on Diversity in Youth Literature. And if you've heard about the Seuss article that where like someone basically, or 2 people basically like looked at every instance of racism that Seuss has ever done in his life, that's us. In the past 3 years since that article was published, it has been downloaded over 330,000 times, which is the gift of open access and also unheard of in the history of publishing. So I didn't write that article. I'm the co-founder and the co-editor of the journal that published it. But I think probably the big reason I'm here is because as a professor at Illinois, I'm working with a team of people. We passed the Teach Act in 2021, and there is no teeth, there is no money to support the implementation of the Teach Act, but we know that it needs to be done. So I'm working with people at my university and teachers in the community to come up with a set of modules to teach people about Asian American history, to teach K-12 teachers and librarians about K-12, about Asian American history, so that they can then teach it to their students starting in the fall of 2022. And, you know, and it's not just like the 5 F's: food, fashion, folklore, festivals, and famous people, but really talking about like issues of racialization and exclusion, and also resistance, obviously. And then let's see, I think that's probably it. Personally, I'm also starting to write children's books, so that's been kind of exciting. But other than that, Asian American nonfiction, because we need more. But yeah, that's me. And my brother Terry is here. I mean, he's not really my brother, but sort of my brother. I've known him for years.
Oh, Sarah, that's amazing. So I'm taking down all of these links, and we're going to share them back out with the group and make them available. We're going to dive into these resources too, and so we may have further questions for you down the road. Thank you so much. This is just tremendous, and the way that you've taken this work in such an applied dimension to the literature is so important. I mean, we just see all of the different dimensions of education that have touch points, access points to making these transformations are so important. Really, really great. And Terry, can you go next? Really excited about the project you're working on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be with all the folks here. I'm just in awe of the incredible work that you're all doing. So like my sister, Sarah, I also don't have a slide presentation, but I have a bunch of websites that I can show and drop some links. So my name is Terry Park, he, him pronouns. I used to be a contingent Asian American Studies professor. I taught at, I can't remember how many places, at least 5, maybe 8, I don't know. Let's see, Miami University of Ohio, Wellesley College, Harvard, and then most recently, the University of Maryland, College Park, where I was a teaching focused faculty member. And while I was jumping from job to job, I decided I should probably have an exit strategy. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I recently founded my own Asian American Studies based education social enterprise called MAUM, MAUM Consulting. MAUM is a Korean word that means mind, body, heart, spirit, all connected. And actually tomorrow, I'm gonna launch our website, but you get to have a sneak peek of the website. I'm still working on it. It's a Squarespace thing. Let's see, there it is. Can folks see it? Okay, I may change it up, I don't know. So I just wanted to give a brief glimpse specifically of the services that I plan to offer, from storytelling curation, and really I mean oral history, which is something that I did at multiple institutions, oral history projects with Asian American survivors of war. And I'm actually currently on the advisory board, advisory board for an oral history project at the University of Kentucky. They're interviewing Asian American Pacific Islanders there as part of a push to mandate Asian American studies at the K through 12 level in Kentucky. I'm going to offer online courses in Asian American studies to the broader public, curriculum assistance. So right now I'm the lead developer of an anti-Asian violence curriculum project with Hamke Center, formerly known as Nagasek, Virginia, based in Northern Virginia. And it's a series of workshops that tackles different manifestations of anti-Asian violence, predominant for a working class base in Northern Virginia. The first workshop will be delivered next month. And I also wanted to show another curriculum project that I did 2 years ago with LEAP. LEAP, forget what it stands for, but it's a Leadership Asian American nonprofit based in LA. And they hired me to develop several guides to accompany the short documentary film K-Town 92 Reporters, directed by Grace Lee, who I'm sure many of you know. And for several reasons, the guides were not made public, but hopefully they'll be made public on MAUM's website. So there were 3 guides that I designed. One for working professionals, basically Asian American ERGs. Another one for advanced people like college students, and then this one for high school students. So I worked with several high school educators on LEAP staff, and basically it covers the socioeconomic factors that led to the 1992 uprising. And of course, tomorrow is the 30th anniversary of the LA uprising. So Target actually sponsored these guides for the purpose of facilitating conversations around race. Again, this was supposed to be released 2 years ago, so during the summer of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter. And the guides will be made public, open access to anyone. And so I still need to fix some typos, but then it'll be made public to anyone. And then let's do another screen share. So today I'm talking about this curriculum project, very much the beginning stages. It's in a proposal form. So I'm sure many of you know Corky Lee. For those folks who don't, he was basically the photographer of Asian America for many decades until he passed away last year, I believe, due to COVID. If you went to any protest or Asian American cultural event in New York or the East Coast, or I feel like I saw him everywhere. It's like, where's Waldo? Corky Lee was probably there taking photos. So the filmmakers of Photographic Justice, the Corky Lee story, reached out to me to ask if I could develop some kind of curriculum to accompany the film. And so I drew up a proposal, submitted it a few weeks ago, and I'm working with Mina Lee, who is an elementary school educator. And so we have different options or ideas of curriculum, some of which target both elementary school students, middle school students, high school and college. Some of the other options are a mixture. And I'll just briefly go over some of the ideas that we have in terms of specific lesson plans. Let's see, one idea that I like. So in the documentary, and they're still working on it. They have an 80-minute cut, and I think they're going to shorten it a bit. In the film, Corky talks about how comics was a huge influence for him growing up as a kid. That's what helped inspire him to become a photographer. So Mina and I thought of a lesson plan involving making a zine or your own comic book. And of course, there's a wealth of Asian American comic books as models. We've also thought about like a community photo gallery, inviting people to take photos of their neighborhoods. In the film, it makes it very clear that Corky and his work is very much tied to the space of New York City and all of its ethnic communities. And so we thought of inviting students to take photos of their neighborhoods, and then to compare the photos with more iconic photos by American photographers like Dorothea Lange, Ansel Adams, etc. to see how the American dream has been reframed, relensed by Corky Lee, how that looks different from more iconic photos of what it means to be an American. And then I have like crazy ideas. I don't know if it'll happen, but like, I don't know, virtual reality maybe, or I thought of maybe like an app like what was that, Pokemon Go? I don't know if people remember that app, but I think it'd be great if we could get some engineer, whatever, Silicon Valley, Asian American nerd to develop an app, because in Pokemon Go, when you travel around, you see like actual place-based markers, and then you click on it, and then it tells you, oh, this is where this person stood for 5 seconds. So what if we adopted the framework of Pokemon Go and inserted histories that Corky Lee documented, right? You walk around Chinatown, you go to the corner of Mott and whatever street. Oh, this is where there was a protest by New York City Chinatown sweatshop workers in 1976. Here's a photo by Corky Lee, right? So I think there are different ways in which we can reimagine, experiment with place-based histories, digital technologies, and hopefully we'll get a chance. Oh, and we're going to partner up possibly with Apex for Youth, which is a nonprofit based in New York City. They work with low-income Asian American youth. So if this proposal gets accepted, then Apex for Youths will help workshop the curriculum and actually help circulate it to other high school students in the New York City area. So that's something I want to do with MAUM, is really partner up with different organizations. And I'm really thankful to receive the assistance of the Pedagogy Lab. If it doesn't get accepted by the filmmakers, then Mina and I still want to do it. We still want to pursue the project somehow. Get permission from the Corky Lee family, of course. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Terry, that's tremendous. Also, it bears, it's worth noting the tremendous courage that it's taken for you to pursue this. I want to just recognize that choice of out of the adjunct, and your work here demonstrates just the incredible talent and the work that you've done. That the institutions of higher ed aren't able to recognize and put this into those forms of merit that are that the university values. So the work that you're doing here, obviously it is so important, and that you're able to do this independently now is just tremendous. I can't emphasize that enough. The way that the work that we're doing for to build curriculum and to have a more inclusive and accurate history taught in schools is going to require your work to succeed, as well as many other people taking this on in the fashion that you've done. So I just lots of applause, and man, this is terrific work. So I'm going to stop talking. I really would love to hear folks' questions. They're things that you're excited about, want to learn more. What do you think you'd like to see here based on what we've heard? Anything. It's open forum.
I can just chime in quickly about something that I'll plan to use immediately based off this meeting. We're doing for AAPI month guest readers from our high school to our elementary school. The students in the Asian American Student Union will be going to every elementary school classroom and acting as guest readers. We picked the books with support of the librarians, but I'm really thinking, Sarah, that your guide will be a great lens for us that I didn't know was out there before, to say, is this really, we did a lot of research, but did it lead us in the right place? And so I'm already thinking how I can, immediately put some of this into action to evaluate some of the work that we already have underway. So it's awesome. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I mean, I think, there are a lot of really bad lists out there too. Like if you look at, NPR's best 100 list, or Time or whatever, depending on the way those lists are generated, like sometimes they ask the readers of Time to submit like their favorite children's books or whatever. And inevitably you're going to get something like Tiki Tiki Tembo, which is an awful picture book that never should have been published. And so, when you're looking for books to read with young people, it's important to look at, and I'm sure you've already done this, and I really hope your librarian already did this too, but to look at lists that are generated by Asian Americans. And then even in that context, like what expertise does that Asian American have? Like a lot of moms generate lists, but then they'll put something like No Kimchi for Me on it, which I think is also a terrible picture book. You have to say no kimchi for me every time you talk about it. And it's about a little cat that doesn't like to eat kimchi. There's like literally a line in that book. Like she's like so frustrated because kimchi is so spicy. She says, "Arg, I hate kimchi." And I'm just like, the optics of like a white librarian reading that to a class full of white kids where maybe there's just one Korean kid, and like they use the word stinky and spicy. And so even books that are like made by Korean Americans are not necessarily good books. And so it's really important to be very careful about, the books that, the optics also of like an Asian American reading an Asian American book, but if it's an awful book, right? And then there's all these politics of celebrities who create books, like social media influencers like Eva Chen, like she has this new book called I Am Golden, but the eyes on the cover are just lines. And they're a little bit slanted. Jeff is covering his, but like that book is omnipresent because of who she is, right? Meanwhile, Asian American children's book creators who are trying to get into the door and trying to get the marketing dollars for their books cannot get their books in front of librarians and children, right? And so there's so much to think about when we're selecting books, like especially if it's just one book. Like, what is the one book that you're going to read to this class, right? I had to, during the pandemic, I read to my daughter's class every Friday. And I was like, I am going to pick a book by a BIPOC person or a queer person for every single Friday. If I have only 40 Fridays or whatever it was to do this, like, I think I read one white book and it was written by a queer writer. So yeah, there's a lot, there's a lot at stake with those books that we read to children because it's an endorsement of whatever message that book contains, right?
Mm. I forgot to ask Jeff to introduce himself. We got started and you joined us a little bit later, but just wanted you to be able to introduce yourself to the group, Jeff. So welcome.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sorry for my tardiness. My name is Jeff Alton. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm the Assistant Director of the Asian American Cultural Center at the University of Connecticut Storrs. It's very nice to meet you all.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And Tara, I think you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, yes, thank you, Jason. I really wanted to respond to what Terry has been presenting, the storytelling and the VR and the involving game. It sounds fascinating, and I hope it becomes a successful project. I feel all those methods are very important to incorporate in the curriculum building and interacting with the kids about the history. And as an artist, as a visual person who has training, I'll be very happy to contribute in any way I can. All the work sounds very exciting. So I'm really looking forward to see what the outcomes are and follow the work in future.
Thank you, Tara. That means a lot. And I would love to work with you. So hopefully we can connect later and talk more.
Yeah, Tara is our artist in residence with the Institute, and they'll be wrapping up with a artist talk on Monday, which we'll record. So I'll share it with the group. But also, Terry, there's a possibility, if you're looking for technical expertise on that side, we could discuss maybe making connections with the digital media design department at UConn, and see if there's students who want to get involved, or any way that we can scale up the project. So that's an open invitation. As things evolve for you, you let me know how to help out. But similar kind of arrangement where maybe you could be the artist in residence next year or something like that. Just so I just want to keep things open and support the work. So that's just tremendous. Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. Caitlin. Yes.
In the realm of storytelling, so I am currently a grad student pursuing a Master of Fine Arts here at UConn in acting, and I have some education teaching background as well. And I'm just very interested to expand this beyond like children's books, and to be able to engage older, like secondary students, to be able to apply this as well, taking it beyond what they're reading, what they're seeing in front of them, and enabling them to create their own story and to take ownership of that. So I'm just really excited to take this in that direction, and kind of maybe frame or guide, how they would be able to create their own story and write that narrative for themselves. And so it'll hopefully build confidence, help them own where they're coming from and where they want to go, to really engage them in a different way besides reflection, but also to apply that and to create as well.
I have something to add to that, but I want to let anyone else go first.
I can relate to what Caitlin, you just said. Even the fifth graders, when one of the lessons that I was co-teaching with the fifth grade teachers in Georgia, when we read the children's book, when we analyze Korean War children's literature. So we are kind of a students are doing we call it talk back to the literature, or the literature detective. So we really see that whose voice is missing, who's telling in the storyline, how United States portrayed it in this a scene, and then what what image of the United States is missing in this book. So students are kind of talking back to the literature, and then after that they create another scene. There's no scene about a U.S. role in the Korean or beyond, a rescuer. Then students create the picture, right? The image along with a text feature kind of thing. So students in itself actually rewriting that the children's book about either Korean War, the Vietnam War, kind of thing. So yeah, that, and then the book, and then as you also put about the acting, right? Students can do some skits or a different way. Although we need to be mindful about we're never doing the simulation or role play in the typical history. But then if we put it into all the actors, the students in them, not the oppressor's mind, it's a student not even oppressed, students with the agency to do certain kind of work. So there's many other a pedagogical theory, or the pedagogical approaches, right, to make this learning is really beneficial for everybody who's engaged in that learning space.
Just building off that too, now I'm just so excited. There's a form of theater called playback theater, where we can create narratives and involve the audience based on personal stories, things that have happened to them, and kind of recreate that space and open up to the audience, why was this uncomfortable? Why did this make you feel uncomfortable? Or why did it make this person react in a certain way? And then we can open it and invite the audience in to jump in and be what is a better solution? What would be a better way to respond? And then so we play that out. Different audience members can come up, and we can do this with students, with faculty, and this is really helpful, I found, to address microaggressions within like different environments. So that helps enter like a different level of reflection where they are actively involved as well. And then after all that playback, we can open it up to discussion and hear what people, you know, just like what they've learned or different experience that maybe they didn't know were happening or just didn't happen to them, and just engage in meaningful conversation within the community. So it's a safe space to engage and open that up.
And just to add to that, something that I hope to offer through MAUM is Theater of the Oppressed techniques. And I think that is one of the Theater of the Oppressed exercises that, yeah, it's so amazing, especially working with immigrants, limited English proficient speakers. There are just so many exercises provided by Theater of the Oppressed that can really elevate a lot of the ideas, content in other curriculum. So I'm excited to hear of this.
So I just wanted to, I have a million things that I could say. This was wonderful. But I think, you know, kind of thinking about piloting this year, the new African-American, Black, Latino, Puerto Rican Studies course here at Staples High School, and working on the state standards work and working with my team here. We have a graduation requirement called Area Studies that we're revising and updating. And of course, the timing of everything that's happening with Connecticut state law and all of this work that's happening is great, because it gives us a lot of things to reflect on as far as what that programming looks like for students. And we already have a marker in place to start to do that work. But I think what I've been, you know, kind of wrestling with as I've been doing all of these pieces of work and listening to all of this brilliance today is, you know, how do we really create the systems to build capacity? We spent years with education accountability and PLCs and data and right? But how do we do something of that magnitude for curriculum work and considering all of these pieces that we need to build capacity of staff members to be able to analyze curriculum in meaningful ways and really honor the identities of kids that are in classrooms and respect families, all different types of families, and really look at the curriculum in those important ways. And so I say, you know, there's this heavy lift and all of this accountability around data, right? And we have a lot of information about our families. We have a lot of information about our students. It doesn't seem that different to me that we could, I'm hopeful and optimistic that there are ways to do it and build the capacity of professional staff to be able to analyze curriculum in the same ways that they're able to analyze student achievement and performance, right, with the right type of movement in the right direction. So I thought a lot about that as I thought about what kids read, what they do. How do we do that? We need our professional staff to have the capacity to really be able to analyze the curriculum and instruction as they move forward. And so that to me is just something that's top of mind. So thank you for inviting me.
We've been working a lot on that in Farmington, Lauren, and it's been a real challenge, obviously, in the past couple of years, because it feels like we are a little in survival mode in many ways, and we're trying to push forward on really important work, but we're also, you know, barely keeping our heads above water with the realities of what teaching and learning has looked like. But we've made a lot of progress recently. The social studies vertical team developed a curriculum review tool using Zaretta Hammond's framework for equity. We're going to be testing it out after curriculum writing this summer. It has a lot to do with, well, if you're looking at hers, you know, multiculturalism, social justice education, and then the last one is slipping my brain now, but it's really about the materials, the assessments. It's got a lot of elements of universal design for learning in it. So we're trying to have a process by which we can evaluate and approve curriculum, if you will, through that lens. And that wouldn't just be social studies, but we would ultimately be using that for all curriculum in the district. It's written in a really, not in a disciplinary fashion. We've also been developing social justice teacher PD modules that we're hoping to make a prerequisite to being on a curriculum writing team in the district. So we developed those, a small group of us did, leading up right after George Floyd. That summer, we actually had about 100 people sign up to do that PD, not paid over the summer. Obviously, it was 2020, so different times that people were really stretched pretty thin, but a lot of people committed to do that work. It was wonderful. It was homegrown, by us. And now that's going to be a prerequisite to curriculum writing. So anyone who's going to write curriculum in Farmington is going to have gone through social justice professional development, is going to have to exit that curriculum using a tool based on Hammond's framework. And so we're trying to experiment a little bit with it, but obviously we haven't done, those things are being put into place now. So we'll have to see if they give us a kind of information and force a kind of reflection that we hope they will, but it's certainly a starting point.
Yeah, I really appreciate the practical, pragmatic dimensions of this. And wow, Nicole, thanks for sharing that. The idea of prerequisites for participating in the curriculum writing committee, that's a great idea. To generate the awareness of what is fundamental for writing curriculum, but then also, I think, Lauren, what you were suggesting, the capacity for that, where does that training come from? Who's designing that training? How many teachers could it serve? So yeah, I mean, I do look at this work as like 5 to 10 years, just in order to think of practical steps, not just what's next year, but really putting that long yardstick out there. So I don't mean to call you out, Chris. Can I ask you to think with us on that point too? What does it look like where you are?
Yeah, I love the thoughts and I love what you're talking about happening in Farmington, Nicole. I do think that there's a unique circumstance among the profession now where asking for volunteer can be challenging, right? But we just have to move past that, and we go where the energy is, and we cultivate that energy. And sometimes, a lot of times we're talking about in education, the people who get stuff done are the people early in their career and people late in their career. People in the middle, they got kids and they got families and soccer practice and all that stuff, right? But what we can do to sort of cultivate that, and I really like the idea of some of the changes that we have to make if we're going to be serious about reforming some of our educational practices. We have to start with ourselves. We have to start with our own self-reflection, and I'm suggesting, I advocate that we do that through some sort of a structured kind of a program. There are experts out there who can help us through that. And Nicole, I'd love to know what framework you guys are using. If you're just using, some stuff from Zaretta Hammond, or if there's other pieces that belong with it. But we've got to go through that stuff because the reality is, to get this information out, to get this to land and to stick. I have 2 people of Asian descent who are professionals in my building. They can't do all of the work. We can't be looking to them to do all the work. They're just, so, the dominant white people are going to have to step up and do this work. And, dear Lord, we have to do the work. It's our responsibility to do this work, but to make sure we're going to do it in a sensitive and an appropriate way that is going to best serve our students becomes paramount. I think, Jason, you might have mentioned it at one point before. That's almost more important than any curriculum that we write. We've got to start from the right frame of mind, from the right frame of reference. So those efforts, I think, are really important, and anything that this group can do to raise those and move those forward, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Making me think, if that's a space that the lab can support, in terms of, generating those opportunities for learning, or those kinds of ways of building kind of micro credentials for curriculum building, right? That say there's, maybe there's something that we can arrange that's a periodic kind of check-in or guidance kind of forum for curriculum writers, that there's a sounding board for that. There's kind of like open forum, you throw your questions in, and the team will take a look and provide recommendations, guidance, support in that fashion. Because you're right, in order to have this, and I think one of the other lessons that I've kind of learned too is that it might feel sort of convenient if there are these kinds of bounded curriculum that come with a lot of resources. If it doesn't come from the community, from their interests, it's not going to stick as much, and it's not going to be as relevant and tailored to the teaching strengths, the knowledge of the community and the families, the students. And I think there's just so much more ownership over that when it does come from the district, from the school. So I really love what you're saying. And if the lab can, like, I look for direction from y'all. You tell me what shape this should be, and we will bend and flex to meet that. So because I think that's where we can be most effective.
Yeah, I'd also just add, like, I know that the curriculum writing piece is so important. What's on paper, right? What's guiding the work is essential, and it's a really strong foundation, but also thinking about ways to look at the implementation side, right? To Sarah's point earlier about who's reading the book and how they read the book and what they say when kids ask questions about the book. And right, you can have some great things in a curriculum guide, and natural things happen in the beautiful spaces of our classrooms. And what is the capacity of teachers to do that? And how do you support that in the teaching staff? So ways, even in those micro credentials, to be a curriculum writer, but also to have ways to model implementation and have resources for what that implementation looks like in a real classroom. Thinking elementary teachers, when they're doing a read, is there a way to have a read aloud that you could watch and see how a teacher does that effectively, so that you're not just reading on paper, a lot of, think about like the TC workshop pieces, right? You're reading kind of a handbook to some extent, right? Of just do this, say that, which is helpful, but watching a really good practitioner do this work with students would be a really nice supplement. And I think that sometimes that's what's missing, right? We have great curriculum guides, or we have great things, and we use them all the time, and they're super helpful, and my teachers are amazing and they implement things beautifully, but sometimes they struggle, and they'd love to be able to have something tangible to see, how does somebody do, what does it look like in a real setting, and how can I model my practices after somebody who's really skilled at doing this. So thanks.
Let me just throw in that I've been working on this pretty deeply over the last couple of years in this district, particularly with the African American efforts to bring in African American representation in our curriculum. And we can make a lot of good gains, and we have made a lot of good gains bringing those pieces in and putting them in front of kids. But then, as you're saying, Lauren, then we still have teachers who, sometimes they just make these awful mistakes. And sometimes there are mistakes that really we should know about, right? And so helping teachers to be in that, to work from the framework of an anti-racist, anti-bias pedagogy, that they have the sense of who their audience is, both Black students of Black students, students of color, and white students, to support all of them in those various ways. That's been the real challenge, or that is one of the real challenges.
I want to piggyback on that part. Like it's currently what's going on with all this anti-CRT. In a sense, like it's all they are using for their political gain, whatever kind of thing. But also like there's a room that like we kind of give them to like a space that they can like kind of thing. What I mean by that is like it's many teachers right now that because of all the BLM and George Floyd, so many teachers wanted to engage in the difficult conversation with the students, but oftentimes the teachers don't have they are not empowered with the pedagogical tool, right? Pedagogical way to engage the students to discuss about institutional racism and kind of thing. So then some teachers might have just kids like white kids feel all the guiltiness. And then without there's no room for how can they become the not just like a guilt, collective guilt, but as like a responsibility. So then there's a pedagogical pieces that teachers need to be empowered to conduct this kind of like a difficult conversation with the students. So students don't leave, the white kids all feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the super racist, and Black kids all feel like we are just victim. But we need to send them off the classroom after discussion with this is share the the implication, right? Share the responsibility. We as none of us like a pure evil, none of us a pure perpetrator or pure victim, right? So then that what Lauren, as you point about, we need to support the teachers, not about only the content knowledge that they are missing, but also the pedagogical pieces, how we can do this work, deliver this engagement of difficult knowledge and difficult history in a pedagogic way. So then students all feel like, wow, we need to make some change. So that we don't hear, wow, all you do, teachers, you are doing is make my kids feel uncomfortable or the a guilt kind of thing. That is we already give them the room for those who are against about whatever this difficult conversation. Oh, you guys are just only making kids are feeling suicidal because you make them kids feel like they're all racist or something. Yeah, I want to say that. Yeah, pedagogy that is really important to empower the.
If I could I'm going to throw one more little piece into this. We have watched the incredible rise of the trauma acuity level among students, among all of us, but particularly among students. And I don't know, I didn't vet this, but I just saw recently as many as 1 in 5 kids in a secondary classroom have seriously considered suicide. We're in this new realm of our role and responsibility as educators and having to pick up that notion of trauma. Now, that doesn't mean that we also have to be cautious that we don't look out at our students and see we've got students of any descent and figure, well, those kids have racialized trauma that has passed over generation to generation. That may not be the case, but it also can be the case, and so we have that dimension to be on guard against and supportive of simultaneously. It's just getting pretty complex.
Yeah, and I think I just underscoring the value of this pursuit and thinking of it critically and extensively. So I really appreciate that. And Terry, yeah.
I just have a quick question. Does the Connecticut bill or some of the other Teach Acts in Illinois, and I know there's one in Ohio that's being cooked up, offer support for implementation? Okay. I mean, because I can see
Connecticut, yeah.
Connecticut. Okay, what kind of implementation support is there?
It's earmarked for 100,000 for
that
a
one
new position. Yeah, in the State Department of Education, which would be a person to kind of coordinate between the state State Education Resource Center, CERC, and then also with other community organizations, hopefully with us too, and the districts. And so that person would be connecting state level resources, and having, bringing in the norms of, of other curriculum to this, so that, it fits as best as possible with existing, expertise, standards, etc. That's my understanding. Proof is in the pudding, as they say.
Yeah, and I wasn't here in Illinois when they proposed this. I started my job in August 2021. It passed, I think, in July 21. And so I got here and they were like, okay, we're doing this thing. But my understanding is that there is no support for implementation. There's no financial support. There's no teeth to make sure that it's being implemented. And so there's a lot of things up against us, but I'm still glad that it exists, because now at least there's an expectation. And we, like, Asian American history should have been taught yesterday, right? And so we have just scrambled to put together all these resources. The Asian Americans Advancing Justice Chicago has been working really hard to also provide resources. And I'm really glad to hear that there's sort of like a coordinator position in Connecticut, because I think that's what was lacking in the state of Illinois, where we were like as soon as I got invited to work on this project, I was like, how do we know that no one else is also making this, like at UIC Chicago, or like somewhere else? And so there are different groups in Illinois working on things, and we've throughout the year, like, kind of gotten into Zoom calls together and stuff, but there isn't still like a coordinator who's sort of like making sure that people aren't reinventing the wheel in different places. And that's also my hope for, like, across the nation, that as Connecticut does its work and Illinois does its work and New Jersey does its work and Ohio and other places, that we're not reinventing the wheel of things that we have created. But that, like, when we make things that are state specific, obviously, like, that's going to be the work that we have to do on our own. But are there other resources that we could share? Could we create like a master document of, like, discussion guides and community resources, like national or state specific or whatever? Like, one of the things we were discussing in the Teach Act meeting this morning is how many teachers do we think are actually going to take the modules that we're launching this summer? And one person was like, I think we'll be lucky if we get 40. And then Yoon Pak was like, I think we're going to get 1,000. And Google Classroom has like a limited, like, whatever registration capacity. And I was like, there's nothing stopping people in, like, New Jersey from enrolling in our modules, right? Like, and they were like, no, there's not. Like, there's no mechanism in place for us to, like, confirm that a registrant is an Illinois K-12 educator. And so I was like, I think it's possible for us to get thousands of registrants, because this is, like, it's a need that is countrywide, and we are the ones right now who have modules that are, like, about to launch. So I don't know, it could go either way. Yeah. Yeah, Terry, that's exactly, yeah, that would be really great. Our modules are actually asynchronous to launch in the summer, because educators, like, that's what we polled people, and that's what they prefer. But also, it would be great to have a 1-week summer institute. I mean, Teaching for Change in DC does all kinds of, like, institutes in person, and they also do virtual institutes, but they're, like, timed, right? They're not asynchronous. And so if people are really invested in learning, and they will make the time.
This has been just a tremendous conversation. I'm just floored, one, with the presentations, and then also the ideas that we've generated, the conversation around how to really address student needs right now, and where they're at, and how to make curriculum in ways that is efficient and effective, and comprehensive. This is, I'm so grateful for y'all. So we're coming up on an hour and a half, and I know you guys have lots of other things to do. So I want to thank you all, but one thread that I kept on thinking of, throughout the conversation, the presentations was, in the sense is that there is a sense that we do not have a lot of resources. The stories that we're looking for haven't been written yet. The collections, the photo collections have not been, made available. The archives, so that you're, accessing haven't been folded into, regular channels of inquiry. And how exciting it is that students could be doing some of this work, that students can be involved as their own. When we were talking about the theater, the playback theater and all this stuff about how students could be telling their own stories as, the first generation of, students, receiving this kind of education, what that does for them. I think those forms of not just reception, but also production, right? That these are, could be also a generative pedagogical kind of dimension too. So this is, a lot of neurons are firing in this conversation. So this has just been tremendous, and look for continued, outreach, and to my guests, Terry, Soyhun, Sarah, thank you so much. This has been fantastic, and really look to more interaction, engagement with y'all. Anyone would like to say any parting words?
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for holding space for all of us. I'm really excited.
Thank you for inviting us. Terry, what you're doing is so amazing, MAUM. Because I'm Korean, I know why, because I feel like it's not just like a mind or body or soul. It's just all together. Thank you for even naming it. MAUM, calling it naming it, amazing. What you will bring to especially the K-12, the school teachers, right? The things that you are going to generate. It's like, it's amazing, priceless. Thank you for doing this work. Sarah, I love you. You're amazing.
Love you too.
Jason, thank you for doing this work. And the amazing teachers in Connecticut, we are watching here. You guys are like
thank
our
you.
dream. We are calling from the Georgia. I mean, when you look at like Illinois and Connecticut, oh my God, I wish I moved to that place. So thank you for keep doing like a shining, and then like let the world know. So then stay like a Georgia, Florida, or Texas. We will be embarrassed and we can do better. So yeah, please. Thank you so much for doing this hard work.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good evening.